Welcome and thank you for standing by. Currently, all participants are on listen only for the presentation. At the time of the question and answer session, please press star then 1 to ask your question. Today's conference is being recorded. If anyone objects, they may disconnect. I'd like to turn the conference over to Ivan Aguilar, so you may begin.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're calling from. Thank you for joining today's Partner Friday web series on what's new on IBM Cognos Controller 10.1. We have a very interesting session for you today. There'll be a couple of speakers with me today, and I'll just take you through a couple of items before I hand it over to them. At the end, we'll have some questions and answers. However, if you would like to pose a question, you can use the chat box on the right of your screen, if you will. Just write your question there, address question to all so everyone can see the question and also get the response from someone on the team. As you may already know, we do this the first Friday of every month. There's a team in the U.S. that is in charge of helping our partners. If you're calling from somewhere outside of the U.S., you should probably get in contact with your local channel manager to know who is able to provide you help locally. Now, just a matter of wrapping my area here, I just wanted to remind everyone that there's a ton of information available on Partner World. As you know, you must have a user and password to sign in. And recently, we have added some information on new demos, also on the new products. So it's very interesting that you would please check this information out at least once a month. There's also a fast way to get into to the website through a tiny URL. There's one, as you can see here, IBM BA events that will get you to the upcoming web seminars or even the ones that have already taken place. There is also a list of all the scheduled webinars that we have done through the year. You can view them on your own time, if you will. And of course, there is also the IBM BA demos link that will take you to a plethora of content of new demos and videos and scripts and what have you that you can make use as partners. A very extensive information there. And they have all been updated. There's BI and also SPM content and even active reports, everything that you may need for your presentations. And of course, also a lot of information that is available for you for free. So please check this section out as you can. Now I'm going to hand it over to Mike Nikivicus, who's going to take us through a quick brief on what's new on Cognos Finance, and then we'll continue with Controller 10.1. Mike?
Thanks, Ivan. Basically, I'm going to go over a couple slides to go over just what the consolidation software in Cognos is about. I'll talk a little bit about Cognos Finance, the latest version, and then I'll pass it off to Paul Allen, who is the practice lead for North America for Controller. We're very lucky to have him today. He's probably one of the best people in the company when it comes to Controller. So, and then if there's enough time afterwards, I'll do a little bit of a demo for you of Controller as well. So the first Cognos Finance, for those of you who may or may not know, is the older consolidation product within IBM Cognos. We've had it since 1999, roughly. It is kind of as I said, it's the older product. It's basically just getting conformance enhancements these days. Basically what that means is it's being upgraded to run on Windows 7, for example, and Excel 2010, which would be the latest what Cognos Finance 7.5 is about. That was kind of the major release of Cognos Finance. So that was what the release was about. It was merely conformance. There really hasn't been any new functionality added to Cognos Finance in quite a while. It is a very good product. It has a lot of happy customers, but the future of consolidation within IBM Cognos is controller, so that's what we're going to focus today on. And we'll go over, controllers obviously being integrated with, is integrated with TM1, with Clarity, FSR, with Cognos 8 and Cognos 10. So it is the future going forward. As far as the complete coverage of financial systems within IBM Cognos, we have, as I mentioned, we have Cognos Controller, which is our consolidation tool. We have TM1, which is our planning, budgeting, and forecasting tool, more or less. Then we have our FSR, which is the last mile of financial reporting to do your 10Ks and 10Qs to the SEC. And then, of course, we have Cognos 8, Cognos 10, and the financial analytic applications. So basically, with Controller, you can do your financial consolidations. What that means is basically, if you own multiple companies, mapping those chart of accounts into a centralized chart of account and then consolidating them, doing extra things once they're consolidating, like doing currency conversions, intercompany eliminations, allocations, minority interests, joint ventures, things like that, which we'll be going over today. That works hand in hand with TM1, which I'll be going over in the next slide. And then, of course, the financial reporting, the last 10K, 10Q reporting with FSR. Obviously, the formats that we can have with those products, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF, XBRL, obviously it works very well in HTML. That's kind of the solutions within, the financial solutions within Cognos IBM. As far as Controller is concerned, as I mentioned, it's a consolidation tool, so it's meant to take in chart of accounts, or GLs, from multiple different systems. For example, you might have SAP, and then your corporate might have SAP, and then you might buy companies that are using Great Plains Dynamics, or Epicor, or Oracle, or any ERP package out there. And then, of course, you run into a problem. How do I financially report on those? Well, Controller is meant to take all those different disparate GLs, map them into a centralized chart of accounts, do the consolidations, do extra things like I said, the currency, the intercompany, things like that, and then give you the ability to report on those, whether they be management reporting, statutory reporting, tax reporting, whatever. So that's kind of the source systems can really take not only GLs, but HR data, operations data, flat files, Excel files, whatever, bring it into Controller, and then use the financial reporting within Controller in-process reporting to do that. Then we have something called FAP, or the Financial Analytical Processor, which we'll be going over later, which allows you to then take that data and bring it into TM1. Why would you want to bring it into TM1? Well, you might want to bring it into TM1 so that you can budget on it. You could also bring it into TM1 so you can do more in-depth analysis, slicing and dicing, drilling down, that sort of thing. And then, of course, once it's in TM1, the Cognos BI platform will read it, and you can get the dashboards, the scorecards, things like that. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, the way Controller works. As far as Cognos Controller 10, and our differentiators, why Cognos Controller 10 over the competition like Hyperion or SAP's Cartesis. It's a single controlled environment. It's application configurable. It's finance, owned, and operated, and it's out-of-the-box functionality. So all those points in red are very important. What that simply means, this is the selling points of controllers over the other products, those other competitive products. It basically, in those other competitive products, if you want to do something like a currency conversion or intercompany elimination, you have to know some advanced coding, write it up, and so then you get IT involved. It could be, SQL scripting or MDX, or Visual Basic, or things like that. So with Controller, it's much simpler. The finance people it's out-of-the-box functionality. So, for example, if you want to do an intercompany elimination, you're basically putting in the debit and the credit, maybe an offset account, and then Controller, you load in the balances. Controller will automatically do the elimination for you. There is no VB coding done in the background. It's very simple. And so therefore that makes it finance owned and operated, which basically means they don't have to rely on IT. And obviously finance departments love that. With out-of-the-box functionality, you have about 200 or plus out-of-the-box canned reports to help you with the consolidation process, which is another big advantage. And of course, the total cost of ownership, keeping the implementation times down. You don't have to write all that coding to do things. It makes Controller a much better product, we think, than our competition to handle the consolidation process. With that being said, I will hand it over to Paul Allen, who will go over what's new in Controller 10. I just need to highlight him and make him presenter. Paul, you'll see at the top, you just hit the next to go from slide to slide.
I'm good. Thanks, Mike. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. As Mike says, my name is Paul Allen, North American Practice Lead. I also have notional global responsibility around capability as well. So I do work with business partners around the world to support them in controller implementations. So as we just discussed, I will be running through with you today the key enhancements with the new Controller 10.1 product, which came out a few months ago. So these are the key, the headlines really: audit trail on data, intercompany reconciliation, UDBR, which stands for user-defined business rules, some changes to FAP, contribution at top level, automatic journals at group level, some other improvements, and the normal conformance improvements that come with every release. And we're going to work through those in a little bit more detail now. So just one thing, we will go into some detail, but we won't go very, very deep into the weeds. Some of these particular enhancements are quite technical and can become very, very deep. So the objective today, from my perspective, is just to give you an overall understanding of what these enhancements mean from, in terms of describing them to clients, rather than actually being able to go away and implement them. So first of all, audit trail on data. So we have an existing audit trail functionality in Controller 8.51 relating to changes that are made to dimensions or structures. So for example, if you change an attribute such as the conversion rate method on an account, that would be tracked if you turn that audit trail capability on in 8.51. But there was a common request by our customers, particularly at the customer advisory boards, to be able to actually track data changes, not just metadata changes. And this is what this enhancement brings about. It answers the simple question, who did what and when? So this is what this screen looks like. We've combined both the metadata and the data changes on one summary screen. You can put in some parameters in terms of a period filter, user filter, and the kind of functions that they have performed. And when you run that or preview that report, you will see a list of activities that have taken place. You can then drill further down on those activities. And essentially, we have a full history describing the life cycle of an event. So you can see every change to a particular number in the system. Now, without going into too much detail, the summary is held indefinitely. The detailed is held for a fixed period of time. Now that's dependent, but that is configured. You can see the last section on this slide, delete data changes, details older than, in this case, 30 days. If you want to, that is stored in a standard database relational table, so you could export that, take that out, and use another tool to keep that permanently and report on it. But essentially, we as I say, we keep the main changes, the summary changes indefinitely, but the detail is deleted after a period of time. The philosophy behind that is obviously that you might want to have the detailed changes while you're doing the close and a little bit after the close while you're doing the analysis, and then beyond that you probably don't need the detail. This is a feature that can be enabled or disabled, and that is also on this particular menu item as well. You can see the enable tracking of structure changes and data changes on this particular menu item. The next enhancement that we're going to talk about is intercompany reconciliation process. So we had a fairly substantial array of reports that enabled you to see the intercompany balances and also how they pertained, how they related to other countercompany balances, and in terms of a reconciliation report. We've taken that an extra step with a new intercompany report. Now that intercompany report essentially gives you a quick overview of all intercompany transactions within parameters that you run when you run the report. It will do on-the-fly currency conversion, so there is no need to run a currency conversion prior to running the report. So this is kind of the selection screen. You can select the appropriate parameters, the actuality period, currency, companies, and so on, as well as a largest accepted difference. So you can essentially eliminate or exclude differences which are below a certain threshold, which you can define here either as an absolute amount or as a percentage. So this is kind of what the report looks like. It's a full list of all of the companies and counter companies within your defined parameters that you selected at runtime, along with a selection of columns. Now these columns can be, again, excluded or included in the report. There is a button in the top right-hand corner which is effectively kind of a column or field chooser or selector, and you can see the pop-up window in this slide shows that choose columns option. And that will include information such as the company, the counter company, the report number, which is the type of intercompany elimination it is. Is it a receivable, payable? Is it interest? Is it long-term loans, et cetera, et cetera? The accounts, the counter companies, and so on. When you run this report, it's possible to drill down to specific transactions, so you can go down to the very lowest level, and that's what this the slide that's currently up is displaying. So the value proposition, as I mentioned before, is to be able to look at your intercompany balances from a holistic perspective rather than zeroing in on dividends or receivables and payables or sales and cost of sales. Obviously, all of these are or can be interrelated, and so what our customers have asked for is to be able to see, as I say, a holistic view of all the intercompany balances and transactions between companies within their group, and then to be able to drill down. And the feedback that we've had so far has been very positive about this report. Okay, so next enhancement that I want to talk about, this is a fairly substantial philosophical change or at least addition to the controller product. And this is in response to the request to provide better extension capabilities for edge or fringe customer requirements. So as Mike explained earlier, controller is a true application approach to consolidation, and that's based on the premise that consolidation is a fairly well-defined process. It doesn't matter where in the world you're doing consolidation, and no matter which company, which industry, it generally falls within well-defined parameters. You're going to take data, load it in from different sources, currency convert it, do some adjustments, add it all together, and then report on it. Now, in some cases, we've found the requirement we found some fringe requirements, as I say, and so the user-defined business rules is designed to address those fringe requirements. Now, it's important to notice that this is a complement, but not a change to controllers' application approach to philosophy. So we're not going to suddenly replace the application or the application's business rules and consolidation engine with scripting. This is just to address those fringe requirements. The other benefit of user-defined business rules is that it will enable us to solve specific requirements outside of release cycles. So that what we're saying here is, if there's a requirement that does evolve as a common requirement, we expect that we will be able to address this very quickly using user-defined business rules. And so we can come to the market very quickly with a solution. In the meantime, we can, if it's appropriate, we can add that to the controller's core application approach. So it basically enables us to fix a problem now until we essentially build it into the application's core functionality. So this is kind of what it looks like. This is the user-defined business rules screen. It consists of code lines. It's pseudo-programming. It uses Python programming language. And what has been done is a range of financial style functions have been created to create source values, to create operations or calculations on that data, and then to define the target. So you're basically taking data from controller, you're doing some kind of calculation or manipulation on it, and then you're saving it back to the database, essentially to an automatic journal type. So once you've created your business rules, and you can create as many as you want to, you then add those to something called a job. We introduced the job concept, I think it was in 8.5, where we introduced allocations as an enhancement at that stage. And it's the same philosophy here as well. You create your script or your user-defined business rule, and then you add it to a job, and then that job is mapped to a specific consolidation type and actuality. A couple of important things here. Firstly, the calculation can be done at any point in the consolidation process. So it can be done, for example, before currency conversion, or it can be done after currency conversion. And also, we guarantee that the scripts will be upgradable. So this is, again, slightly different, I think, to a lot of our competitors. So where they have upgraded their software, somebody needs to go in and effectively edit all of the scripting to make sure it works with the latest release. This is very much more incorporated into the application. The functions are very much controller specific and built into the controller application. And so development is saying that it will guarantee that scripts will work going from one version to the next, which is pretty reassuring to know if you're a client and you're looking to upgrade. Okay, so that's user-defined business rules. As I say, it provides a lot of flexibility to address fringe requirements, and we don't expect it to. I mean, it's been out in the market for a few months now. I haven't personally implemented UDBR at any client, so we don't expect it to be something that's implemented at every single client. It's something to address specific fringe requirements that are outside of the controller's extensive inbuilt functionality. So some of these scenarios that may be involved here is to deal with mid-year changes in ownership. The controller currently has some challenges. You have to post manual journals to address structural changes. And this is one area where we will be able to address this using UDBR. And the intention over time is to build up a repertoire of predefined business rules which can be made available in kind of a best practices kind of way. Moving on to FAP, as Mike said before, that's Financial Analytics Publisher, and this is essentially the mechanism that we have created to take data out of Controller's relational database source, be that SQL, Oracle, or DB2, track the changes, and then trickle those changes to a TM1 cube. That TM1 cube is then obviously made available for reporting. So this was introduced in Controller 8.5. It was a fairly substantial step that we took in terms of offering a whole new area of functionality. And as you would expect with any new functionality, this is set to evolve. And the first wave of evolution, the second wave, it comes with 10.1, where we've added some functionality to the initial FAP offering. So some of these benefits include weekly actualities, a consolidated cube, comments measure, flexible naming convention, additional company information, being able to address security as a slowly moving dimension, and some other things such as extensibility as well. And we're going to look at each of those separately. Before we do that, just want to talk about the general strategy with pushing data to FAP Cube. Our strategy around this is to provide an FAP core. And what that means is really taking a set amount of information from Controller and pushing that into a TM1 cube with a given amount of capability, functionality, whatever you want to say. That's part of the product. It's delivered by the development lab. It's completely supported, and the focus there is on integrity, transformation, accuracy, and so on. Having said that, we believe that there is no master cube which will basically meet the reporting requirements of every client out there. So we also engage in this strategy of having FAP extensions. So the idea that you take the data that comes out of the FAP core and that you extend the capability of that particular cube to tailor it to a specific client's reporting environment and situation and requirements. So let's talk about some of those improvements. Weekly actualities, this is not a commonly used capability in Controller, the ability to collect information weekly. Most data is collected just monthly. However, some clients do want to do weekly reports on things like sales or perhaps orders. And if you do have weekly actualities, there is a good chance that you're going to want that information made available in a cube. That's kind of the operational information that really is paramount in terms of pushing it to TM1 and making it available to BI, to a wider non-finance audience. So it's a really important enhancement, even though it perhaps only impacts a small client set at this point in time. Consolidated values. Now, this is the difference really between the relational and the OLAP data sources. So in Controller, we very much have a relational data schema. The consolidated entities, or the group entities as we refer to them in Controller, are populated when and only when you run a consolidation. So that means if you change the data in a subsidiary and you do not reconsolidate, the group entities that sit above that entity where data has been changed, they do not change until you rerun the consolidation. However, those of you familiar with a TM1 cube will know that in that scenario, if you change a child node, that will automatically flow up to the parent node. And so what we've done is we've created a consolidated values cube, which essentially will tie directly back to Controller. So this is just kind of one of those things. It's possible in Controller, and it's a reasonable situation to have, whereby the sum doesn't necessarily add up to the total of the parts until you run a process to make that happen. And we are just kind of need to mirror that in the cube just to make sure that we have data integrity between Controller and the TM1 cube when it comes to reporting. Another enhancement to the FAP process is now you can filter by data entry form. Data entry form is essentially the way that we group together accounts in Controller. So what this new feature allows you to do is choose which accounts that you want to include in the TM1 cube and those that you don't. We also have added a flexible naming convention in 8.5. The extended dimensions and contribution closing version were kind of delivered in a predefined, fairly cryptic technical, with fairly technical or cryptic labels on them. Now you're going to be able to change those labels and have your own more business-friendly or report-writing-friendly names. Next, extensibility. So we kind of talked about that when I showed you that kind of Venn diagram of the core and the extension. So what we're offering with 10.1 is the possibility to add some TI scripts and TM1 rules to the FAP cube. In the past, if you'd done this, it would have just been overwritten when you did an initial publish of the cube at any point. Now you have the ability to add some, as I say, scripts and rules, and they will not be overwritten when you run an initial publish. Again, we mentioned this before when at the top of the chapter. Textual comments is a capability in Controller. You can, if you want to, collect narrative against a specific piece of data in the Controller database. That was not published to the TM1 cube in 8.5. In 10.1, that information will be available in a cube, so you can pull out that textual narrative or description or commentary against a particular data value, which again could be very useful in terms of reporting. So moving on to contribution at top level, this is a pretty technical enhancement. This is probably the one I want to go into least detail about. It's much more relevant to the continental European market and maybe a couple others, one or two around Asia, but it's not so important in North America and some other markets. And essentially what this is all about, it's all about the contributive approach to looking at your companies. So in many markets, what the client needs to do is he needs to be able to allocate certain transactions, such as indirect minorities that perhaps happen at the group level above, to an individual company, so they can essentially see a individual entity's contribution of equity or whatever it might be to the overall consolidation at the top group level. And as you can see, the benefits that are being cited is that it's useful when selling a company to evaluate the financial impact, and it eliminates a roadblock for the old to new consolidation engine migration, which happened between 2.3 and the 8.x versions. And that's all I really want to say on contribution at top level. And if that's relevant to your particular market, then that's something to discuss specifically with an IBM representative, I would suggest. Moving on, automatic journals at subgroup level. Again, this is a pretty technical enhancement. It would only really make a lot of sense to people who have worked extensively with Controller and in particular have set up the automatic journals which facilitate investment elimination and so on and so forth. And what basically the issue is, the current solution essentially takes all the automatic journals and rolls them into a base version at a group level. So in other words, you go from a granular detail of the original amount plus eliminations, and it basically gets combined into one amount, and you lose the transparency when you move up the company hierarchy. What this enhancement does is it keeps them separate, and therefore you have the transparency, and that facilitates better reconciliation of your automatic journals. And the way we do that, as I say, is to store those automatic journals in their respective journal types without rolling into the base contribution version as we go up the structure. And therefore, you can drill down on the trial balance, for example, by the automatic journal type and see how the numbers are broken down between what's been loaded and what's been eliminated using, for example, minorities or investment eliminations. The byproduct of all of this is that it means the data is much more cube-friendly because you're not doing this strange transformation of taking data and combining it into kind of going from detail to summary. It stays in the detail level, and that makes sense from a cube perspective as well. So some other sort of minor features and improvements. We've done some work around intercompany. So if you happen to be using extended dimensions and you have intercompany accounts that are broken down perhaps by product or by market, for example, you've got some more options available in terms of eliminating in group in adjustment dimensions. And then also some changes to the standard reports, trial balance. You now can select the currency code in trial balance as well as being able to drill on automatic journal type, which is the enhancement that we talked about before, the journals at group level. And then the new server preference, which allows those transactions to be stored in an adjustment dimension if appropriate. And again, there's a lot more to that, but I don't want to go into the detail on this particular presentation. Second from last, I think we have changed the user interface. A lot of feedback that we get about controller is that it does look a little bit old-fashioned. So changing the UI is not necessarily a small, insignificant task, but we have freshened it up with the 10.1 version. We've got a new color scheme, some new icons, pickers, and so on and so forth. And that is configurable. You can choose to have the business analytics theme, or you can stick with your operating system theme. And again, as I say, we still got some way to go in terms of improving the UI further, but this is definitely a step in the right direction. And then finally, the conventional additions of conformance and translation that we add with pretty much every release these days. We, as you probably know, we work on a cohort basis whereby we release products as cohorts, and the cohorts to Controller 10.1 is TM1952, BI 10.1, and FSR 6.6. The added conformance for this particular release is controllers now compatible with Office 2010 and Microsoft SQL Server 2008 R2 if you're going to use SQL as your relational database store. Translation, moving on from kind of Portuguese and Korean and so on that we added in 8.5, we've now also added Italian and Japanese, and this is in line with IBM policies around Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, etc. languages that all our software has to be made available to. And as you can see, some kind of slight adjustments to accommodate the Chinese markets. Okay, back over to you, Mike.
All right, Paul, if you could right-click on my name and make me presenter again. Okay, so what I'd like to do next is give you a brief demonstration of controller. Let me just share. All right, and I'll get into controller. Paul, you see, or Ivan, do you see controller in front of you right now? Just to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm in controller 10.1 right now. Basically, I'm not going to necessarily spend so much time on the specific 10.1 enhancements that Paul just went over, but more just give you a brief overview of some of the cool things within Controller. First off, you see on the menu structure here, you can do things at the low-level company level, or you can do things at the consolidated level, or what Controller calls the group level. One of the things that you can do is called group status, which basically gets into, in the U.S. markets, North American markets, Sarbanes-Oxley, kind of tracking what's going on at every level within the consolidation process. So, for example, I can go ahead on my consolidation type and choose my management structure, my legal structure, my tax structure. In Controller, you can create as many different hierarchies as you want. And when I do that, basically you're going to see your entire consolidating hierarchy with parent levels and all the individual companies underneath it. And you can see where they are in the month-end consolidation process. Basically, you have missing, they haven't done anything yet. You have processing, they're currently entering data, but they haven't finished. And then you got reconciled, which means you're in balance, and then you're ready to run the consolidation. Basically, one of the things you can do is you can pick an individual company, and you can double-click on it. And basically what you're going to get is you're going to get all the user-defined processes that need to take place for that company at month end, everything that you want them to do, whether it be various reports to run, various entries to process, various data to load, whatever it is you need to do. And of course, within that, you can actually see who did it and when, who updated it or changed it and when. So everything is tracked within Controller, which is very nice to let you know where each company is in the month-end process. If I go to the Maintain menu item, this is where pretty much you're setting everything up within Controller. You can see here that we have our account structure, which is where you put in your centralized chart of accounts. You have your company structure, which is where you set up your management hierarchy, your statutory, your legal hierarchy, your tax hierarchy, or any other hierarchies you want. You have this configuration area. So, for example, one of the things that Paul and I have mentioned is that Controller is kind of out-of-the-box functionality that it can do things for you automatically. So, for example, if I go into automatic journals, control tables, and I go to my intercompany balances, this is where you basically set up how to do intercompany eliminations within Controller. It's very, very easy. You can set up as many as you want, one for payables, receivables, one for sales, cost of sales, anything you want within the intercompany elimination area. And basically you have your intercompany receivable income, you have your intercompany payable expenses, you put in the debit and credit accounts. And then, of course, you have differences in posting where you can put in various accounts where those differences could go for differences if you're doing currency translations. And then, of course, you have offsets accounts. If you have some extra money and you want to offset it somewhere, you can put it to a particular account as well. And, that's the great thing about Controller is you're simply setting this up. And now when you're loading in the due tos and the due froms for the elimination, from those external sources, Controller will take over from there. It's an automatic journal. It will automatically eliminate based on these accounts that you set up. Now, if you don't want to load in the balances, you can actually enter in the balances within Controller, where you can set up, for example, Controller, if I go to company level or group level, you can see that Controller has the ability to do journal entries. However, the journal entries have to balance. Debits have to equal credits. It won't let you create a one-sided journal entry. But when you're doing an elimination, you're basically putting in more or less just your side, and then the opposing company will put in their side. And so we create these data entry reported value screens, which use Excel, where you can enter in a particular side of an elimination, and it gives you online matching right there. So I can actually hit an icon that will show me if my opposing counter company has entered in their side of the transaction yet. So it's just an example of how automatic things are within Controller. If I go to the company structure, for example, here you can also, you can basically set up, what currency conversion method each company is using. You could also set up if a company is partially owned or wholly owned. So this is, again, part of the automatic functionality within Controller, where it will automatically create all you basically do is say, for this particular company, we own 70% of it from the beginning of time when we first implemented Controller till 2006 period 2, and then from 2006 period 3 to 2006 period 6, we own 80%. And of course, Controller will then make the appropriate entries for that. It basically has out-of-the-box consolidation methods for minority interest and joint ventures, where you can see, you simply choose it, and again, it will automatically create the entries for you. Notice that not only can you, well, I guess that's it. Not only can you choose the elimination, the minority interest level, but you could also, for individual companies, say, okay, I own this company from this time forward, I own that company from that time forward. One of the things that we could also do is we have FAP. Let me go into FAP. Which one is it? There it is. So FAP is a client kind of financial automobile publishers, kind of a client tool added with Controller that allows you to monitor Controller and how often the changes are being made, whether you're loading those balances in or entering them via the one-sided journal entries or journal entries themselves, to see, okay, how often, and then of course with this clock interval you can say, okay, how often do I want to load in that, check for those changes within Controller, and then it will automatically, once it finds that change, it will then process that change and bring it into TM1. And it only does it incrementally. So if I go to data marts here, what this is doing is this is basically, you have an initial publish where you're initially publishing the Controller data into, and it's creating the TM1 cube for you. And then after that, it's then looking in the clock interval, how often you set it, every 10 seconds, every minute, every 5 minutes, every hour, whatever you want, to look at any incremental changes. So then it's only taking those incremental changes. It's not reloading the entire data set from Controller again, thereby making the process very quick. So you can choose different sources within Controller. These are just different demo databases I have, but you can basically choose your consolidation source, and then of course choose the data mart that you're going to. Now, when I say data mart, as Paul had mentioned before, Controller runs on Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, or DB2. So what you're basically doing is you have to decide which one so if you're using Controller on SQL Server, for example, you're going to be using FAP with SQL Server, so that it will take that information from SQL Server and bring it in over to TM1. But basically you're setting what periods and actualities you want to bring over and what company structures. So in this case, I'm bringing my 2006 period 2 actuals for my management structure. And then of course, FAP will do everything else for you at that point. I can then go into TM1 itself. Where is TM1? I'm opening to it. There we go. And there you can see that it's created the cubes for you. It's created the company details and the consolidated group. So as Paul mentioned in his PowerPoint, the details would be the lowest level companies. The consolidated group would be those everything automatically consolidated, because you're simply adding everything up. And then, of course, it brings in over all those dimensions for you. So, for example, if I go to an account and double-click, you can see that it's brought in all my forms. Now, within forms within Controller, you can set up a P&L form, a balance sheet form, various statistical forms. For example, you can one that has your trial balance to bring in just your entire trial balance. But here's, for example, my P&L. If I want to see the names, I just hit that icon, and you can see that it basically brought in all my accounts from Controller. So once it's in Controller, then of course you have the cubes themselves where they bring in the data for you and bring in the commentary and stuff like that. So that being said, there's 5 minutes left. Why don't we now open it up for questioning? That's kind of a very high level of what I wanted to show today. Any questions or comments? Ivan, Paul, we'll open it up at this point.
If you would like to ask a question on the phone line, please press star then 1. To withdraw a question, star then 2. Once again, to ask a question, please press star then 1. One moment for questions on the phone lines.
Additionally, if there's questions, you can add questions to the chat within the webinar itself as well. Well, it doesn't look like any questions.
Yeah. So might want to wrap it up.
Yep.
Okay, so well, thank you everyone for participating. I want to thank especially Mike and Paul for their great presentation and information. It's very useful. Please keep tuned and keep watching our Partner World page, where you can take a look at different webinars. You can again review this and like in 24 hours it will be posted. And then check for the next month's webinar on Wednesday, December the 2nd, on Friday, December the 2nd, which is going to be about FPM assets, demo assets that may be very useful for you.
I do have a question coming through. Did you want to take that now?
Yeah.
We have one question from Mike's line. Your line is open.
Hello?
Yes, Mike, go ahead.
It's Mark Cracknell from Aramar. Just a question really on licensing. Is there any issue about Cognos Controller publish into Cognos Express?
Ooh.
That's a very good question.
It's an excellent question.
I don't know the answer to that one. We're going to actually have to get back to you on that one. I see that David is on it. Maybe potentially David knows, but I don't know. So we'll have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, I only asked the question because I was over in Vegas last week, and there were conflicting answers coming from depending which country you were based in.
That's the other thing, that there may be policies that are not the same in in Europe as they are in the U.S. So we'll definitely have to get back to you on that one.
Okay, thanks so much.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
There are no other questions on the phone lines.
Okay, so with that, thank you very much, and we'll give you back a couple of minutes, and see you next time. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Today's call has concluded. Participants may disconnect at this time.